Hi, I'm Luke, welcome back to PhotoBuy, and today we have something very special, and as a Fuji user, I'm very happy to be doing a review of the X-T4. Let's get into it. As a Fuji user, I'm still going to be very particular about what Fujifilm have actually done with the X-T4, but let's face it, they've done a really good job, and it's a great hybrid camera for photo, video, you name it, is really good. If you're a sports photographer, absolutely amazing performance out of the camera. And if you're a video user, well, you've probably seen the specs as well. 10-bit video internal, which is fantastic. So overall, Fujifilm have done really well. But they also did really well with the X-T3. So what exactly have they improved that you can't get with the X-T3? Which, by the way, I'm actually filming on right now, so you'll get an idea of what the Fuji X-T3 can do in video. We'll also talk about the X-T4. So some of the more notable differences is actually the thickness of the body. It is a bit thicker than the X-T3, and we said that for the X-T2. So each time they've gotten bigger, but there's a good reason why this body has gotten a bit bigger, and that's because we're rocking a bigger battery. I think we can all speak for the Fuji community and say thank you, Fuji, but it is about time. That battery wasn't great. I own about 7 of them, and they run out substantially quickly compared to other cameras. So now you've actually got a battery that can compete. Is it an improvement? Absolutely. Is it the best? It's all right. It's not too bad. I mean, you can get about... This does depend on how you set the camera up, but about 600, or in my experience, I got about 800 shots before the battery died. So very, very impressive. Oh, we've also got dual SD cards still, so just like the X-T3, although slightly wider in space. They were slightly faster, but it would have been nice to see the CF Express that we saw in the A7S3, might I add, because that would really be able to push the boat out on what this Fuji X-T4 can do. But it's not the end of the world. They have removed the door, so they made it individual for the port, so your microphone is still there, your headphone jack is gone, you've got the remote, and in the bottom you've got a mini HDMI as well as USB-C, which you can use for charging like you can on the X-T3. Oh, I forgot the most important feature. It's now a flip-out screen. That's great for video, it's good for photo, but I don't know about you, but I really liked the X-T3's multiple tilt screen. It was just a preference of mine. I like to shoot portraits. Arguably, you can just do that when you're shooting portrait, but it was just something nice about the screen being like that, and you would just pop it open. But hey, it's a small thing, but this is nice to see from Fuji, and I'm sure most of us will prefer this over just a standard flip screen. So, well done, Fuji. You did good. Now, it wouldn't be a Fuji camera if you don't talk about the built-in filter presets, because Fuji put a lot of time into these filter presets. So let's list them out and we'll tell you about them. So the ones that we've seen before, we can get the screen to come up. There we go. So you got your standard Provia, you've got Velvia, you got Astia, you've got Classic Chrome, which is what most people use. You got the Pro Neg High, Pro Neg Standard, Classic Neg, and then we've got now the Eterna Cinema. We got that with the X-T3, but now we've also got the Eterna Bleach Bypass, which is basically, as they describe it, unique color with low saturation, high contrast. Now, arguably, most filmmakers won't use this, but it is available for use. But most of us, as filmmakers, will prefer using F-Log and then choosing how we want the video to look like in post. But thank you, Fuji. It's a nice touch. And then you got Acros Black and White, Monochrome, which is just like a more muted, less contrasty. And lastly, you got Sepia, which, as far as I'm aware, no one actually uses. So it makes sense that it's at the bottom of the list. Nice. Now, arguably one of the best things, excuse me, I think I'm a bit overdone. Let's just adjust this. Now, arguably one of the nicer things about the X-T4 when using it for shooting is how quiet it is. A dampened shutter using magnets. Genius. Interesting, scientific, mechanical. Helps your photography a little bit, makes you quieter, more discreet. They should put that in the X Pro 3. Bit late now. Honestly, like when you go from X-T3 to X-T4, you feel like someone's taking a hammer to a nail with the X-T3. That is an exaggeration, but it's just the experience of going from an X-T3 to an X-T4. It is so nice to use. Although arguably when you're working with models, they don't hear the shutter. So you kind of got to tell them, I am taking pictures. It is a bit quiet. You can try listen out for it, but don't worry about it too much. I'll let you know. So if you're working with a subject as a person, you need to let them know when you've taken a picture. Otherwise, they'll be holding that pose for a bit too long, which will be awkward and you won't get such good photos. So just another thing to bear in mind when you're using the X-T4. Speaking of modeling, I actually did go to Brighton and I actually did use the X-T4 as a camera, which was a very fun and very good opportunity. I got to take photos of a drag queen, which is very... well, it's different for me and I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It got me out my bubble of what I'm used to shooting, which is mostly landscapes and athletes, two very contrasted topics. But yeah, it was different. It was fun. It was in a studio environment, so it was nice to get back into the flow of being in a studio again. And the X-T4 performed really well. Now, we had a few issues, not because of the X-T4, because of the studio. They lacked modeling lights for the flashes, so we ended up having to use the one light at the top and try to expose, so it got cancelled out, which was, you know, pretty easy to do. Obviously, with the X-T4 dials on the outside, so it was easy to work on that and get the correct exposures. But at the end of the day, with the shoot, we actually mostly used the JPEGs. I did sit on the photos for a while so that I could forget about them and then go back and edit the RAWs. But to be honest with you, I was actually spending more time trying to make the RAWs look like the JPEGs because I was so impressed with the JPEGs. I ended up just using those. And in fact, what I'm actually showing you are the JPEGs from the shoot. Arguably, some of them are slightly edited, like cropped and slight exposure tweaks, but nothing where it's like contrasted and changed or anything like that. But you can actually see what the X-T4 can do in terms of, like, as a photo camera. If you're running on an X-T3, there's no point going to the X-T4 unless you need that bigger battery or the higher frames per second. But to be honest with you, I use an X-T3 for athletes and I think is usable and perfectly fine in that matter. You know, it's Fuji for you. The main upgrade you're going to get is if you're going from an X-T1 or an X-T2 to an X-T4, you'll see a night and day difference. Believe me, definitely worth upgrading to. But if you're an X-T3 user, I don't see there's a major reason for you to upgrade to an X-T4 unless you need that extra video power or you need that more battery power. Or, because I'll talk about it later, so we'll go back to the video now. Moving over to video, this is where things get a little interesting because now we actually have a switch. So you can switch between photo and video like that. It's its own little dial. So they got rid of the metering options. That's now moved internal. But now you have a shoot menu and a film menu as two separate things. And when you are in film mode, when you go into the menu, it'll show you video. And in shoot mode, it'll show you the photo side. So it breaks things up. We saw that with the Leica SL2, and we're starting to see it with more cameras that are coming out now. So it's a really nice feature to have, and it's very useful. So with 4K, this can shoot 4K up to 60 frames a second. It can do 1080 up to 240 frames a second. But it isn't the best quality. You also kind of lack that sharpness, and that's mainly because we're so used to now seeing 4K imagery that 1080p no longer looks so good. But it is still there, it's still usable. If you're shooting for YouTube, I doubt many people are going to notice unless they're on a computer and they click the 4K button. So overall, very impressive. And you've also got 10-bit, which is 420 internal and 422 external, which is fantastic. And with the new card inserts here, you can run memory cards running at 300 megabits a second, and you can get that full data inside internal without needing an external monitor, which is amazing and truly goes to show you what Fujifilm are capable of in the video making world. But one thing that really benefits both of us, and that I'm speaking about photo and video users, guess what, guys? Internal image stabilization. That's right, you have a sensor on a mini gimbal inside your camera. Winning. And when you pair that up with lenses that have got image stabilization. That gives you up to 6 stops of image stabilization, which is fantastic. That means you can go handheld, you can be a little rocky, and you'll be okay. It's fantastic. This really helps video users who are run and gun. They want to get stable footage without getting a stabilizer. I mean, just that alone is an absolute pain in the butt because you have to get that stabilized and you got to get it balanced, and well, your shot's probably gone by now. So having it built in, fantastic. Also makes vlogging a little easier because you're less worried about the jitter because it's being cancelled out. So thank you, Fuji. It's about time though. Maybe it's because of the battery. Maybe the battery was what was halting them from doing it in the X-T3. But I'm not going to complain anymore. I'm very happy that they've now put it in the X-T4. So now it's up to you and I to decide whether it's worth an upgrade. Let's talk about that. So I thought I would talk about it on the X-T4. And one of the things I already noticed is I want to look into the screen, which is over there, when I need to be looking over here. So I'm just going to know that it's in focus and move it out of the way. So I thought I'd show you the video whilst we're talking about this, because this is a really important thing, and that's whether it's worth going from an X-T3 to an X-T4. Now, if you're a photo user, you're only going to see a minor bump when you go from the X-T3 to the X-T4, and if I show you the pricing here, you'll see it's not a big difference. Now, arguably to some, that is a massive difference, but not to others. And what I will say is that if you are a hybrid shooter and you use photo and video, I would say the X-T4 is actually marginally better. You've got a better battery, which means longer video life. It's getting a bit windy. I think a storm's coming. Kind of glad I'm doing this now. You guys good? See how it handles highlights. Yeah, any good? Not so good? We'll find out, won't we? So yeah, it really does. Come on, dude. Now, really? Where was I? So when it comes to choosing between the X-T3 and an X-T4, I would say if you're heavy video, X-T4 is a great option to have a look at. Plenty of features there that's going to help you. You do lose the headphone jack, but if you're running an external recorder, I'm sure you can get the one that comes with a headphone output. So you wouldn't really need to worry about it too much there. You do gain a bit of weight. So again, I'll show you the weight difference here, but don't forget you're working with a bigger body. It's got image stabilization built into it, so you've got a few more mechanics inside it as well. So those are just things to bear in mind. Now, if you're a photo user, the extra that you're going to get is that dampened shutter. And that kind of becomes about it, because everything else you had with the X-T3. And to be honest with you, I personally think the X-T3 is an amazing photo camera. When I moved from an X-T2 to an X-T3, not only was it a massive jump for video, and that is to the X-T4, but just to me, the photos just looked a little bit better, which is why I prefer using the X-T3. Now, as I said, video is going to be the X-T4. So, with that in mind, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. If I got anything wrong, I'm sure you guys will let me know. There's loads to cover with the X-T4. Honestly, there's so many nice features in there. If I left anything out that you think is worth mentioning, say it down in the comments. But this is our review of the X-T4. If you have any questions, my name's Luke, this is PhotoBite, and we'll see you next time.